When my husband's ex leaned across our candlelit table and whispered, "I can give him what you can't," I didn't flinch. I just smiled because I already knew what she didn't. By the time dessert arrived, 2 lives were already ruined, and one was mine to rebuild. I'm Lana Mercer, PR executive, wife of 7 years, and the woman who was just told she wasn't enough in a restaurant where entrees cost more than most people's rent. But what really happened after that dinner? You're about to find out, and it's darker than anyone imagined. See, I'd spent years building careers, managing crises, spinning scandals into success stories. I knew how to control narratives, how to make people believe anything. And that night, watching Riley's perfectly glossed lips curve into a smirk while my husband's hand trembled around his wine glass, I realized something. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to cry, didn't need to flip that table and drench her in Cabernet, though God, I wanted to. No. What I needed was patience, precision, and a plan that would burn so slowly they wouldn't even smell the smoke until everything they had was already ash. So I smiled, raised my glass, and said the words that would change everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it really started, 3 weeks before that dinner, before the baby offer, before I learned exactly what my husband had been doing in Seattle every other weekend, before I became the kind of woman who destroys lives over tiramisu. From the outside, we had it all. Ethan and I lived in a steel and glass condo on the 23rd floor overlooking the Willamette River. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, a view that made visitors gasp every single time. Sunday mornings, we'd walk through the Pearl District holding overpriced lattes, pretending we were still the couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other. We'd browse art galleries we had no intention of buying from, share avocado toast at cafes where reservations booked out weeks in advance, and post just enough on social media to maintain the illusion. The illusion that we were happy. The illusion that 7 years of marriage hadn't slowly calcified into polite coexistence. Because that's what we'd become. Polite. Considerate. Careful. We stopped fighting 3 years ago, not because we'd learned to communicate better, but because we'd stopped caring enough to argue. And somehow, that felt worse than screaming. Ethan made partner at his firm last spring. I landed the Vanguard Tech account, the biggest PR win of my career. We celebrated with champagne on our balcony, watching the city lights flicker like dying stars, and I remember thinking, this should feel like more. We should feel like more. But we didn't. Have you ever looked at someone and realized the love you built is slowly evaporating? Not dying dramatically in some explosive fight or scandalous affair, just evaporating. Like morning fog over the river. There one moment, gone the next, and you can't pinpoint exactly when it disappeared. That was us. We'd stopped reaching for each other in bed. Stopped finishing each other's sentences. Stopped laughing at inside jokes that used to make us double over. Instead, we had schedules. Synced calendars. Dinner reservations that felt more like business meetings than date nights. How was your day? Good. Yours?
Fine.
The Mueller account is moving forward. That's great, babe.
Babe.
God, even our pet name sounded hollow. But the worst part? The part that sat like a stone in my chest every single day? We couldn't have a baby. 3 years of trying. 2 miscarriages that shattered me in ways I still can't fully articulate. Fertility treatments that left me pumped full of hormones, crying in clinic waiting rooms, peeing on sticks that always showed 1 line instead of 2. Ethan said it didn't matter. That we were enough. That we could try adoption, fostering, that there were so many options. But I saw it in his eyes during family gatherings when his sister's kids ran screaming through the house. I felt it in the way his hand would hover over my stomach for just a second before pulling away, like he was mourning something that never existed. He wanted to be a father, and I couldn't give him that. So the silence grew, crept into our bedroom, our conversations, our futures. We stopped talking about 5-year plans, stopped discussing baby names we'd picked out on our honeymoon, Iris for girl, Owen for boy. We just existed, side by side. Two successful professionals in a beautiful apartment, living separate lives under the same expensive roof. I threw myself into work. 80-hour weeks. Crisis management for tech CEOs caught in scandals. Product launches. Reputation rehabilitation. I was brilliant at my job. Everyone said so. I could spin any disaster into a comeback story. Except my own marriage. Ethan started traveling more. Seattle trips for client meetings. Overnights that turned into long weekends. He'd come home smelling like hotel soap and coffee from airport lounges, and I'd pretend not to notice the distance in his eyes. We were drowning in slow motion. And the cruelest part? I still loved him. Somewhere underneath the resentment and the failure and the exhausted silence, I still loved the man I married in that tiny ceremony at Cannon Beach, both of us barefoot in the sand, believing we'd beat the odds. We didn't beat anything. We just became another statistic. Another glossy couple with a gorgeous apartment and impressive careers, and absolutely nothing real holding us together. I remember one night, maybe 6 weeks before that dinner, I stood on our balcony at 2 a.m, watching the river move in the darkness. Ethan was asleep. Or pretending to be. I couldn't tell anymore. And I thought, is this it? Is this what the rest of my life looks like? Beautiful. Successful.
Hollow.
I should have known something was coming. Should have felt the shift in the air, the way animals sense earthquakes before they hit. But I didn't. I just kept going through the motions, believing that if I worked hard enough, smiled bright enough, kept our calendar full enough, maybe we could outrun the emptiness. I was wrong. Because 3 weeks later, Ethan came home with an invitation that would destroy everything. Riley's in town, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. She wants to have dinner. Catch up. I told her we'd love to. Riley Grant. The ex-girlfriend I'd heard about exactly twice in 7 years. And just like that, the fog that had been slowly suffocating us turned into a wildfire. I just didn't know I'd be the one holding the match. Riley Grant wasn't an accident.
Let me be clear about that.
When Ethan came home that Tuesday evening, loosening his tie with that carefully rehearsed casualness, saying he'd run into his college ex at a conference in Seattle, I knew it was bullshit. You don't just run into someone. Not in a city of 700,000 people. Not at a tech finance summit where she had no business being unless she wanted to be there. But I smiled. Nodded. Asked the appropriate questions like a good wife. Riley? I don't think you've mentioned her in years. Yeah, we dated junior year. It was nothing serious. She's in marketing now, apparently. Seemed happy. Nothing serious. That's what men always say about the women who still occupy space in their heads. He said it so smoothly, stirring pasta at the stove, not quite looking at me. And that's when I noticed it, the new cologne. Subtle. Expensive. Not the one I'd bought him for Christmas. She suggested we all grab dinner sometime, he continued, his voice too light, too careful. Catch up. Since she's working on a project in Portland for a few months. A few months. My stomach turned to ice, but my face stayed warm. Interested. Supportive. That sounds nice, I said. It'd be good to meet her. The lie tasted like copper on my tongue. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my husband transform into someone I didn't recognize. He started going to the gym again, 5 a.m. sessions he hadn't committed to in 3 years. New shirts appeared in his closet. He whitened his teeth. Started using that cologne every single day, the scent of it filling our bedroom like evidence I wasn't supposed to notice. His phone became a third presence in our marriage. Buzzing during dinner. Lighting up on the nightstand at midnight. Always face down. Always just out of reach. Work thing, he'd say, barely glancing up. But I knew the rhythm of work messages.
Sharp.
Efficient. These were different. These made him smile in a way I hadn't seen in years. Soft, secret, like he was holding something precious. Plans started canceling. Our Friday date night?
Pushed.
The wine tasting we'd booked months ago? Something came up with a client in Seattle. Seattle. Always Seattle. He was going every other weekend now. Sometimes staying 2 nights instead of 1. Coming home with coffee from Pike Place Market, art from local galleries, stories that felt too detailed, too practiced. You should come next time, he'd offer, knowing I had the Vanguard campaign launch. Knowing I couldn't. Knowing I wouldn't. I didn't confront him then. I needed to see how far he'd go. Because here's what 7 years of marriage teaches you. Accusations without proof just make you look paranoid. Crazy. The jealous wife who can't handle her husband having friends. So I waited.
Watched.
Collected breadcrumbs like evidence for a trial I was already planning in my head. And then I found a receipt. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally. I was looking for our insurance card in his car, digging through the glove compartment, when a slip of paper fluttered out. Departure Lounge. That rooftop bar downtown with the ridiculous craft cocktails and panoramic views. The one where couples go to pretend they're in a movie. 2 glasses of Willamette Valley Pinot Noir. 1 shared chocolate torte. Dated last Thursday. The Thursday he said he was working late on the Anderson portfolio. My hands shook holding that receipt. Actually shook. Like my body understood before my brain could fully process what this meant. 2 glasses. 1 dessert. That's intimacy. That's leaning close over a shared plate, forks crossing, laughing about who gets the last bite. That's the kind of thing you do when you're testing boundaries, seeing how close you can get without calling it what it is. An affair. God, even thinking the word made my chest feel like it was caving in. I stood in our parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at that receipt under the fluorescent lights, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet, but crack. Like ice on a frozen lake, spiderweb fractures spreading silently beneath the surface. Have you ever held proof of betrayal in your hands and realized you have to decide who you're going to be? The woman who screams? Who throws things? Who confronts and cries and begs for explanations? Or the woman who goes quiet? Who files information away like ammunition? Who waits for the perfect moment to detonate? I chose silence. I took a photo of the receipt, put it back exactly where I found it, went upstairs and made dinner like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. When Ethan came home that night, I watched him differently. Studied him like a stranger. The way he checked his phone while talking to me. The way he smiled at texts he wouldn't let me see. The way he kissed my forehead, distant, obligatory, like checking off a task on his to-do list. How was your day? I asked, handing him a glass of wine. Exhausting. The Anderson thing is consuming everything. Anderson. The lie he'd built his Thursday around. I sipped my wine and let him talk. Let him spin his stories. Let him believe I was still the trusting wife who didn't question, didn't doubt, didn't see. But I saw everything now. The late-night texts he took in the bathroom. The way he angled his laptop screen away from me. The distance in his eyes even when we were in the same room, like his body was here, but his mind was somewhere else. With someone else. That night, lying in bed next to him, listening to him breathe in the darkness, I made a decision.
I wasn't going to ask.
Wasn't going to give him the chance to lie, to gaslight, to make me feel crazy for noticing what was right in front of me.
No.
I was going to let this play out. Let Riley think she was winning. Let Ethan think he was getting away with it. Because the thing about being a PR executive, you learn that timing is everything. You learn that the best takedowns happen when people feel safe. When they're not looking. When they've gotten comfortable in their deception. I was going to wait for the perfect moment. And then I was going to burn it all down. 3 days later, Ethan mentioned dinner again. Riley suggested Saturday. That new place in the West Hills. Castagna. I made a reservation. He said it like it was nothing. Like he wasn't orchestrating my humiliation at a Michelin-starred restaurant. I smiled. Perfect. I'll wear the black dress. The one he used to love. The one I'd worn on our anniversary 3 years ago, back when he still looked at me like I was someone worth remembering. I didn't know what Riley wanted yet. Didn't know about the baby offer, the whispered threats, the bombs she'd detonate over wine pairings and candlelight. But I knew enough. I knew my husband had already chosen his side. And I knew that by the time we left that restaurant, only one of us would still have a life worth living. Spoiler, it wasn't going to be him. I think it would be good if we all had dinner together. Ethan said it on a Wednesday morning, coffee in hand, like he was suggesting we try a new brunch spot. Casual. Easy. Like he wasn't asking me to sit across from the woman he'd been sharing chocolate torte with while lying to my face. Riley mentioned she'd love to meet you properly. Get to know you. She feels bad about just appearing out of nowhere. I looked up from my laptop. Studied his face. The way his jaw was set just a fraction too tight. The way his eyes wouldn't quite hold mine. He was nervous.
Good.
Sure, I said, my voice smooth as silk. That sounds lovely. I watched the relief wash over him. Watched his shoulders drop. Watched him exhale like he'd been holding his breath waiting for me to explode. He expected resistance.
Tears.
Accusations. The messy, emotional wife who couldn't handle her husband having dinner with an ex. Instead, I gave him calm.
Control.
The kind of eerie composure that should have terrified him. It didn't. He was too relieved to notice. Really? You're okay with it? I smiled. The same smile I used in boardrooms when I was about to dismantle someone's career. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? You too have history. It's mature of us to all sit down together like adults. Adults. God, the word tasted like poison. I'll make a reservation, he said, already pulling out his phone, energized now. Maybe Castagna? You love that place. I did love that place. Past tense. Before it became the setting for whatever theatrical production my husband was staging. Perfect, I said. Saturday work? Saturday's great. I'll text Riley. Riley. He said her name so easily now. Like it belonged in our home. In our marriage. In the space between us that used to be filled with trust. I turned back to my laptop, my fingers steady on the keys, even though everything inside me was screaming. Because here's what Ethan didn't understand. I wasn't agreeing to dinner. I was accepting an invitation to war. The next 3 days, I prepared like I was planning a campaign launch. Methodical.
Strategic.
Every detail considered. I chose my outfit with surgical precision. The black dress he used to love, the one that hit just above the knee and made me feel powerful. Pearl earrings. Simple heels. Hair swept back in a low chignon. Elegant. Unthreatening. The perfect wife. I researched Riley Grant like she was a hostile client. LinkedIn, Instagram, every digital footprint I could find. Marketing consultant. 34. Attractive in that effortless way that made other women feel like they were trying too hard. Yoga poses on beaches. Inspirational quotes about manifestation and living authentically. Living authentically. The irony wasn't lost on me. Saturday arrived cold and gray. Typical Portland October. I spent the morning at a spin class, burning off nervous energy until my legs shook. Came home. Showered. Applied makeup with the precision of war paint. Ethan was already dressed when I emerged from the bathroom. New suit. That cologne. You look beautiful, he said, and I hated how much I wanted it to mean something. Thank you. 2 words. That's all I could manage without my voice cracking. The drive to Castagna was silent except for the radio, some indie station playing melancholy piano that felt like a soundtrack to our unraveling. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly. My hands sat folded in my lap, perfectly still, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. We were early. Of course we were. Ethan wanted time to settle in before Riley arrived. Time to brief me on how to behave, probably, though he'd never say it out loud. The restaurant was everything I remembered. Dim lighting, exposed brick, candles on every table casting shadows that danced like ghosts. We were seated at a corner table.
Private.
Intimate. The kind of spot reserved for celebrations or confessions. I ordered wine. A full bottle of Pinot Noir because I knew I'd need it. Ethan ordered whiskey. His hands were shaking slightly as he lifted the glass. "You seem nervous," I said, my voice light, curious. "I'm not nervous. I want this to go well." "Why wouldn't it?" He didn't answer, just drank his whiskey and checked his phone for the third time in 5 minutes. And then she walked in. Riley Grant. In person. Not just a name or a receipt or a ghost haunting my marriage, but real.
Solid.
Undeniable. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. Long dark hair, sharp cheekbones, confident stride. She wore a burgundy silk dress that probably cost more than our mortgage payment. And when she smiled at Ethan first, always Ethan first, it was dazzling.
Practiced.
The smile of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Ethan stood, hugged her. Too long. Too familiar. I stayed seated.
Watched.
Cataloged every micro-expression, every lingering touch, every unspoken word passing between them. "Riley, this is Lana," Ethan said, his voice too bright, too forced. "Finally," Riley said, turning to me with that smile still plastered on her face. "I've heard so much about you."
Liar.
"Likewise," I said, standing, extending my hand. "Professional."
Cool.
"It's nice to put a face to the name." Her handshake was firm, competitive, like she was establishing dominance from the first touch. We sat. The waiter materialized. Riley ordered champagne because of course she did. Bubbly and celebratory, like this was a party and not an ambush. The first 20 minutes were excruciating. Small talk that felt like chewing glass. Riley's work in Portland. Her yoga studio. Her Pomeranian named Gatsby. Ethan laughed at her stories like they were the most fascinating things he'd ever heard. I sipped wine and smiled and felt the anger building in my chest like a pressure cooker. And then she leaned forward, looked directly at me, and said the words that would change everything. "So, Lana, Ethan tells me you've been trying for a baby." The table went silent. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering. I felt Ethan tense beside me. Felt his panic radiating like heat. That's when I knew. This wasn't a friendly dinner. This wasn't about clearing the air or mature adult conversations. This was a calculation. A move. A play for something I hadn't even seen coming. Riley's eyes glittered in the candlelight. Predatory. Triumphant. And I realized, sitting there with my wine glass frozen halfway to my lips, that I'd walked into a trap. But here's the thing about traps. They only work if your opponent doesn't see them coming. And I'd spent 3 weeks preparing for war. I set down my glass, looked Riley directly in the eyes, and smiled. "We have," I said, my voice steady as stone. "It's been challenging." The word hung in the air like a knife. Riley's smile widened. "I can imagine. It must be so hard. So much pressure." Pressure. Like my infertility was a personality flaw. A failure. Something she could weaponize. That's when I knew exactly what she was going to offer. That dinner would end 3 careers, and none of us knew it yet. But I was about to make sure mine wasn't one of them. Riley arrived wearing emerald silk that caught the candlelight like water, and I knew immediately. She'd dressed to win. This wasn't just dinner. This was a performance. And I was the audience she intended to humiliate. She swept into Castagna like she owned it, all confidence and calculated charm, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors like a countdown. When she reached our table, she didn't just greet us. She claimed the space, the air, the entire goddamn evening. "Ethan," she breathed, leaning in to kiss his cheek. Too close. Too long. Her hand lingered on his shoulder while I sat there, wine glass in hand, watching my husband's face flush like a teenager. Then she turned to me. Lana, that dress is stunning. Ethan mentioned you have impeccable taste. Ethan mentioned, like they'd been discussing me, analyzing me, picking me apart in conversations I wasn't invited to. I smiled. Thank you. Please sit. The first course arrived, some delicate appetizer I couldn't even taste because my mouth had gone completely dry. Riley ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without looking at the price. Ethan laughed too loud at everything she said. And I sat there, a third wheel at my own marriage's funeral. They fell into rhythm so easily it made my stomach turn. Inside jokes from college. Remember when? Remember that time? Remember, like I wasn't even there, like our 7 years together were just intermission in their real story. God, that night at Cooper's Point, Riley said, touching Ethan's arm. When you jumped off the pier fully clothed because Marcus dared you. You were so reckless back then. Back then. When he was young and spontaneous and not the calculated, careful man who scheduled love like business meetings. I can't believe you remember that, Ethan said, grinning like an idiot. I remember everything, Riley said, and the way she looked at him, possessive, knowing, intimate, made something violent twist in my chest. I sipped my wine, said nothing, let them have their moment. Because I was counting,
Cataloging.
every touch, every laugh, every microscopic betrayal playing out over truffle risotto and seared scallops. The main course arrived. Wagyu beef that probably cost $300 and tasted like ash in my mouth. Riley cut into hers delicately, deliberately, like everything she did was choreographed. So, Lana, she said, turning those sharp eyes on me. Ethan tells me you're absolutely brilliant at your job.
PR, right?
Must be fascinating. Controlling narratives. Controlling narratives. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. It has its moments, I said evenly. I couldn't do it. All that spin, all that management. I prefer authenticity. Being real with people. Being real. This woman who'd orchestrated this entire dinner like a hostile takeover was lecturing me about authenticity. Everyone has their strengths, I replied, my voice honey-sweet. The conversation drifted. Ethan's work. Riley's new project in Portland. The weather. Meaningless words filling space, while something darker built beneath the surface. And then dessert arrived. Chocolate mousse. 3 spoons. Like we were friends. Like this was normal. Riley took a bite, closed her eyes like she was experiencing ecstasy, and then set down her spoon with deliberate precision. The entire restaurant seemed to quiet. Or maybe that was just my heartbeat drowning out everything else. She looked at Ethan. Just Ethan. Like I'd disappeared. I've been thinking about something, she said, her voice soft but clear. Rehearsed. About what you told me in Seattle. About wanting a family. My blood turned to ice. Ethan went completely still beside me. I felt him stop breathing. Riley, he started, but she cut him off. Let me finish. She reached across the table, took his hand. Actually took his hand while I sat right there. I know what you're going through. The fertility struggles. The disappointment. The feeling like something fundamental is missing from your life. Each word was a knife. Precise. Intentional. Aimed directly at my jugular. And I want you to know. She paused, squeezed his hand, glanced at me with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so clearly triumph. If you still want a baby, Ethan, I can give you one. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. I can give you one. Now we should talk about this privately. Not let's discuss options.
No.
I can give you what your wife can't. I can give you what she's failed at for 3 years. I can give you the one thing that's been slowly killing your marriage. The restaurant kept moving around us. Silverware clinked. Conversations hummed. The pianist in the corner played something soft and oblivious. But at our table, the world had stopped. Ethan's face had gone completely white. His hand was still in hers. He looked like a man caught between two cliffs, frozen, unable to move in any direction without falling. And me? I felt everything and nothing simultaneously. Rage that could incinerate cities. Pain so sharp it felt like my chest was splitting open. Betrayal so complete it rewired something fundamental in my brain. But my face showed none of it. I took a slow sip of wine, set down my glass with perfect control, and looked at my husband, this man I'd built a life with, this man who'd apparently shared our most intimate failures with his ex-girlfriend, this man who is sitting here holding another woman's hand while she offered to bear his child. Ethan, I said, my voice unnaturally calm. Glacial. The kind of calm that comes right before detonation. Follow your heart. 3 words. That's all it took to end a marriage. Riley's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected that. Expected tears, maybe. Screaming. A scene. The jealous wife losing control. Instead, I gave her nothing. No reaction. No ammunition. Just 3 words that gave my husband exactly enough rope to hang himself. Ethan finally found his voice. Lana, this isn't. Follow your heart, I repeated, standing now, gathering my purse with movements so controlled they felt robotic. I think that's what Riley's asking you to do. So do it. I looked at Riley then. Really looked at her. This woman in her emerald silk dress, thinking she'd won something. Good luck, I said. And I meant it. Because she had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, my spine straight, every eye in the place following me because they'd heard everything, seen everything, witnessed the public execution of my marriage over chocolate mousse and premium wine. I made it to the parking lot before my hands started shaking. Made it to my car before the first sob broke free. But by the time I turned the ignition, something had shifted. The pain was still there. The betrayal. The rage. But underneath it all, crystallizing like ice, was something else. Clarity. Purpose. And a plan that would destroy them both so completely, they'd wish they'd never sat down at that table. That dinner ended 3 careers. Riley's, Ethan's, and the old Lana's, the one who loved her husband, who trusted people, who believed in happy endings. That woman died over dessert. What walked out of Castagna that night was something different. Something dangerous. Something with nothing left to lose. I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. The thought of walking into that condo, smelling his cologne in our bedroom, seeing our wedding photos still hanging on the walls like monuments to a lie, I couldn't do it. Instead, I drove to my office. 23rd floor. Corner suite. The place where I was still powerful, still in control, still the woman who fixed unfixable problems for a living. I sat in my leather chair, city lights sprawling beneath me like a circuit board, and I did what I do best. I strategized. No tears. Not anymore. I'd cried in the parking lot. Ugly, gasping sobs that felt like my chest was caving in. But that was done now. That was the old Lana. The naive one. The one who still believed love could survive betrayal. This Lana? This version that walked out of that restaurant? She was something else entirely. I opened my laptop. Pulled up a file I'd created 3 weeks ago. The one I'd been building since the night I found that receipt. Because here's what Ethan and Riley didn't know, what they couldn't have known while they were playing their pathetic little game. I'd been 10 steps ahead the entire time. The morning after I found that receipt, I hired Marcus Chen. Best private investigator in Portland. Discreet. Thorough. Expensive as hell. I didn't tell anyone. Not my assistant. Not my best friend. No one. I just handed Marcus a retainer check and said 3 words. Tell me everything. And he did. God, he did. I opened the folder now. 3 weeks of surveillance. And my hands were steady as stone, even though what I was looking at should have destroyed me. Photos. Dozens of them. Ethan and Riley at departure lounge. His hand on her lower back. her laughing, head thrown back, touching his chest. Ethan and Riley leaving a hotel in Seattle. Different clothes than they went in with. Hair messed up. That specific kind of dishevelment that tells you exactly what happened in that room. Ethan and Riley at a park in the Pearl District. Sitting on a bench, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him, like she belonged there. Every single photo was time-stamped, dated, geotagged, irrefutable. But the photos were just the beginning. Marcus had done what I paid him to do. He dug deeper. Bank records, credit card statements, hotel bookings, all obtained through perfectly legal means because Marcus knew exactly how to work within the system. Ethan had been paying for everything. Every dinner, every hotel room, every gift, our joint account, our money, the account I'd been contributing to for 7 years, working 80-hour weeks, building my career. He'd been draining it to fund an affair. $5,000 in the last month alone. I sat there staring at those numbers, and something cold and final settled in my chest. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft. This was calculated, systematic deception. And then there were the text messages. Marcus had gotten into Ethan's cloud backup. Don't ask me how. I paid him not to explain his methods, just to deliver results. And deliver he did. Hundreds of messages between Ethan and Riley. Starting 4 months ago. Long before that accidental meeting in Seattle. They'd been planning this. Coordinating. Reconnecting deliberately. I can't stop thinking about you. This feels like we're getting a second chance. She doesn't understand me the way you do.
She.
He called me she. Like I was a stranger. An obstacle. Something to work around rather than someone he'd vowed to cherish. And the worst ones, God, the worst ones. I think about what it would be like if we'd never broken up. If I'd chosen you instead. Maybe this is the universe giving us what we should have had all along. When this is over, we can finally be together. When this is over, like our marriage was a problem to be solved. A phase to get through. A temporary inconvenience before his real life could begin. I read every single message. Force myself to absorb every word. Let the pain wash over me and through me until it crystallized into something harder. Something useful. But here's the thing Marcus found that Ethan and Riley didn't know about each other. Riley wasn't just some love-struck ex trying to reclaim her college boyfriend. She was desperate. Her marketing firm was hemorrhaging money. $70,000 in debt. Maxed credit cards. Eviction notice on her Seattle apartment. The Yoga and Manifestation Instagram persona was a facade covering absolute financial ruin. And Ethan? Ethan with his partner-level salary and our combined income? He was her life raft. That baby offer wasn't about love or second chances or giving him what I couldn't. It was about locking him down. Legally. Financially. Permanently. She needed a father for her hypothetical child a lot less than she needed access to his bank account. And Ethan, poor, stupid, predictable Ethan, couldn't see it. Was too flattered, too nostalgic, too caught up in the fantasy of being wanted to see he was being played. They were both playing each other. And neither of them knew I held every single card. I sat back in my chair, watching the city lights pulse in the darkness, and I smiled. A real smile. The first genuine one I'd felt in weeks. Because I finally understood what I was dealing with. Riley thought she was the predator. Thought she'd swooped in and stolen my husband with her silk dresses and shared memories and offers of biological salvation. Ethan thought he was the victim. Trapped in a loveless marriage, finally finding happiness with someone who truly understood him. They both thought I was the obstacle. The complication. The emotional wife who needed to be managed or discarded. They had no idea. No idea that I'd been documenting everything. Building a case. Constructing their downfall with the same precision I used to salvage corporate disasters. But the real secret wasn't what Ethan hid. It was what Riley never saw coming. See, Riley had made one critical mistake. She'd offered to give my husband a baby at a public dinner in a Michelin-starred restaurant. In front of witnesses. In front of staff. In front of me. She'd made her play visible. And visibility in the wrong hands is suicide. I opened a new document. Started typing. Every word deliberate. Every sentence a weapon. I had 3 weeks of surveillance. Financial records. Text messages. Witness statements from restaurant staff Marcus had already interviewed. I had proof of affair. Proof of financial infidelity. Proof of premeditated deception. But most importantly, I had leverage. And I was about to use every single ounce of it to dismantle their lives so completely, so systematically, that they'd never recover. Ethan wanted to follow his heart.
Perfect.
I was going to make sure his heart led him straight off a cliff. And Riley? Poor, desperate, calculating Riley, who thought she could waltz into my life and take what was mine? She was about to learn that when you come for a PR executive's marriage, you better be prepared for the kind of public destruction that ends careers. I worked until sunrise, building my strategy, planning every move, anticipating every defense. By the time the sun rose over Portland, I had a blueprint for the most elegant revenge I'd ever conceived. And the best part? They wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late. Riley texted me 2 days after the dinner. Can we talk? Just us. I think there are things that need to be said. The audacity was almost impressive. She wanted to meet for coffee. Stumptown in the Pearl District. Public enough to feel safe. Intimate enough for whatever victory lap she was planning. I said yes immediately, because I'd been waiting for this. She arrived 15 minutes late, a power move obviously, wearing athleisure and oversized sunglasses like she was someone important trying not to be recognized. She ordered a matcha latte, sat down across from me with this practiced expression of concern that made my skin crawl. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, pulling off the sunglasses. I know Saturday was intense. Intense. That's what she called the public implosion of my marriage. Intense. It was certainly memorable, I said, sipping my black coffee. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, playing the role of concerned friend. "Look, I want you to know I didn't plan for it to come out that way. The moment felt right and I thought honesty was important." Honesty. This woman wouldn't know honesty if it slapped her across her perfectly contoured face. "I appreciate that," I said, my voice neutral. She studied me, confused. This wasn't going how she'd expected. She'd anticipated anger, tears, begging maybe. Instead, I was calm.
Composed.
Sipping coffee, like we were discussing the weather. "I care about Ethan," she continued, testing the waters. "I always have. And I think maybe you two got married too young. Maybe there are things he needs that I can't provide?" I wasn't going to say it like that. But that's what you mean. I set down my cup. "Riley, let's not dance around this. You offered to have my husband's baby. At dinner. In front of me. So let's skip the part where you pretend you're not trying to destroy my marriage and just say what you came here to say." She blinked. Recalibrated. And then that mask slipped just enough for me to see the triumph underneath.
Fine.
"You want honesty? I love him. I never stopped loving him. And I think he made a mistake marrying you when what he really wanted was someone who could give him the life he deserves." The life he deserves. Like I was some kind of deficiency. Some unfortunate obstacle between Ethan and his destiny. "And you think that's you?" "I know it is." She smiled. Actually smiled. "He's already made his choice, Lana. He just hasn't told you yet. I'm trying to make this easier for everyone." Easier. She was sitting here in a coffee shop 3 blocks from my office, telling me she was stealing my husband for his own good. The rage inside me was a living thing, but I kept it locked down, controlled. Because this exact moment, was what I'd been waiting for. I reached into my bag, pulled out a manila envelope, slid it across the table slowly, deliberately. Riley looked at it like it was a snake. "What's this?" "Open it." She hesitated.
Good.
She should be nervous. When she finally opened the envelope and pulled out the papers inside, I watched her face transform. Confusion, recognition, horror. 8 pages. Printed emails, financial transactions, trading records, all with her name on them. What? Where did you get these? Does it matter? I leaned back, crossing my arms. What matters is what they show. Her hands were shaking now, the papers rustling. This isn't. Insider trading? I finished for her.
Yes.
It is. For 3 months, Riley had been receiving information from Ethan. Details about upcoming mergers, acquisitions, confidential client moves. Information he'd shared pillow talk style, not realizing she was using it. She'd made over $40,000 trading on insider information from Ethan's firm. Information she got from my husband. Information that was completely, devastatingly illegal. The trades are all time-stamped. I continued, my voice clinical. Cross-referenced with Ethan's client meetings. The pattern is undeniable. You received confidential information and profited from it. That's securities fraud, Riley. That's federal prison. You can't prove. I can prove all of it. Marcus Chun is very thorough. Every trade you made correlates with information Ethan would have had access to exactly 72 hours prior. The SEC would have a field day with this. The color had drained from her face completely. She looked like she might vomit right there on the table. But here's the beautiful part, I said, leaning forward now. Ethan gave you that information, which makes him complicit. Even if he didn't know you were trading on it, and I have texts suggesting he absolutely did, he violated his fiduciary duty. His NDA. His ethical obligations. He didn't know, she whispered. He was just talking. I never told him what I was doing with it. Doesn't matter. The moment he shared confidential client information with someone outside the firm, he broke the law. And when that person traded on it, he became an accessory. I watched it sink in. Watched her realize the trap she'd walked into. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to end whatever this is with Ethan. You're going to leave Portland. You're going to disappear from our lives permanently. And if you do that, if you walk away right now and never contact him again, I won't send this to the SEC. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Prison and destroyed careers or a quiet exit. Seems generous, considering you tried to steal my husband. She stared at me, eyes wide, breathing shallow. He'll never forgive you for this. He'll never know. I smiled then. Cold. Final. Because you're not going to tell him. You're going to ghost him. Block his number.
Disappear.
And he'll think you got scared or changed your mind or whatever story he needs to tell himself.
But you and I
will know the truth. What truth? I leaned in close enough to see the mascara starting to smudge under her eyes. That you thought you were the temptation, the prize he was supposed to choose, the woman who could give him everything I couldn't. I paused. Let it hang there. But you were never the temptation, Riley. You were the evidence. Her face crumpled. Actually crumpled. Like I'd physically struck her. I needed to know how far Ethan would go. I continued. What he'd sacrifice. What kind of man he really was underneath the marriage vows and promises. And you, desperate, calculating, predictable you were the perfect test. You used me? You used yourself. I just documented it. I stood up, gathering my things. You have 24 hours to be gone. After that, I make a call. Your choice. I left her sitting there, surrounded by evidence of her own destruction, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No triumph. Just cold, clinical completion. Was it justice? Was it manipulation? I don't know anymore. All I know is that when someone tries to destroy your life, you have 2 choices. Let them, or destroy them first. I chose survival. And I'd do it again. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have let her win? Or would you have burned it all down? Riley was gone within 18 hours. No goodbye to Ethan. No explanation. Just vanished. blocked his number, deleted her social media, left her Portland sublet with 3 months still on the lease. Ethan called me 17 times that first day. 17 desperate, panicked calls I let go straight to voicemail. Lana, please. Riley's gone. I don't understand what happened. We need to talk. Please. I deleted every single one without listening to the end. Because while he was spiraling, trying to understand why his mistress had ghosted him, I was putting the next phase into motion. On Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after that dinner, a process server walked into Ethan's office at 9:45 a.m. I know the exact time, because I'd scheduled it that way. Mid-morning, after his team meeting, when the office would be full and buzzing and witnesses would be everywhere. The server handed him the envelope in front of his colleagues, in front of his assistant, in front of the junior analyst he'd been mentoring. Divorce papers. Comprehensive. Detailed. Filed with the Multnomah County Circuit Court 3 days prior. I wasn't asking for a divorce. I was informing him it was already happening. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Division of assets. Spousal support. And, this was my favorite part, a request for full financial discovery given evidence of marital asset misappropriation. That's lawyer speak for, I know you've been spending our money on your affair, and I'm going to prove it in court. His assistant told me later, we'd always gotten along, and she was horrified by what he'd done, that Ethan went completely white. Just stood there in the hallway holding those papers while everyone pretended not to stare. He called me immediately. I didn't answer.
He came to the condo that night.
I'd changed the locks that morning. He stood outside our door for 20 minutes, knocking, calling my name, begging me to let him explain. I sat on the other side in complete silence, drinking wine, listening to him fall apart. Eventually he left. And that's when the real unraveling began. See, here's what people don't understand about reputation destruction. You don't have to say anything. You just have to let the truth exist in the right spaces. I never made a public statement. Never posted on social media. Never told our friends my side of the story. I didn't have to. Because in Portland's professional circles, everyone talks. And when a successful couple divorces suddenly, spectacularly, with lawyers and process servers and sealed court filings, people ask questions. And then they answer them themselves. Ethan's colleagues knew something had happened at that office service. They'd seen his face, seen him unravel in real time. The restaurant staff at Castagna? They'd heard everything that night. Had watched Riley offer to bear my husband's child while I sat there. Had seen me walk out with my head high. Stories like that spread
fast.
Within 3 days, the Whisper Network was doing my work for me. Did you hear about Ethan Mercer? Affair with an ex-girlfriend. Wife filed for divorce. I heard he was using company information to impress her. That last one wasn't something I planted. That was pure speculation. But speculation based on truth has a way of finding purchase. And once that rumor started circulating, that Ethan might have been loose with confidential information, his clients got nervous. The first one pulled out on Tuesday. A tech startup preparing for IPO. They requested a different consultant. No explanation given. Then another. Then 3 more. By Friday, Ethan's client roster had been cut in half. His firm's senior partners called him in for a meeting. I know because Marcus was still monitoring the situation, call it insurance. They asked him directly, had he shared confidential client information with anyone outside the firm? He said no. Technically true, he told Riley about deals, but never gave her actual documents. But the damage was done. The suspicion was there. And in finance, suspicion is guilt. They didn't fire him. That would have been too obvious, too actionable. Instead, they reassigned him. Took away his major clients. Put him on administrative projects. Career purgatory. He went from partner track golden boy to glorified paperwork manager in 2 weeks. And I never said a single word publicly. That was the genius of it. That was the power. I didn't need to destroy him. I just needed to step back and let his own actions catch up with him. Every choice he'd made, the affair, the lying, the financial infidelity, the loose lips about client business, they were all dominoes I'd carefully arranged. All I did was knock over the first one. The rest fell on their own. His reputation crumbled like wet paper. Colleagues who used to invite him to golf outings stopped calling. Networking events suddenly had no room for him. His name became synonymous with indiscretion, poor judgment, liability. And me? I said nothing. Showed up to work every day. Performed brilliantly for my clients. Took meetings, closed deals, built campaigns. When people asked about the divorce, and they did, carefully, delicately, I gave them the same response every time. I'm focusing on moving forward. I appreciate your support. Professional.
Composed.
Giving them absolutely nothing to work with. My silence became its own statement. It said, I don't need to explain. I don't need to defend. I don't need your pity or your judgment. I'm above this. And that silence, that refusal to engage, to justify, to participate in my own public humiliation, it became my brand. The woman who handled crisis with grace, who faced betrayal with dignity, who didn't need to scream to be heard. Clients started reaching out. New ones. Big ones. Companies facing scandals who wanted someone who understood reputation management, not just theoretically, but personally. We need someone who knows how to control a narrative without saying a word, one CEO told me. Someone who understands the power of strategic silence. My business doubled in 6 weeks. While Ethan's career imploded, mine exploded. And the most beautiful part? He'd done it to himself. Every single consequence was the direct result of his own choices. I didn't plant evidence. Didn't make false accusations. Didn't lie, or manipulate, or fabricate. I just documented the truth and let it breathe. Riley disappeared completely. Last I heard, she'd moved to Austin. Deleted her entire online presence. Started over with a new name, new life.
Good.
I hope she learned something. Ethan tried to reach me for weeks. Emails, texts, messages through mutual friends. Please, we can fix this. It was a mistake. I never stopped loving you. Riley meant nothing. You're my wife. Every message more desperate than the last. I responded to exactly one. My lawyer's email with the finalized settlement terms. He could keep his car and his 401k. I got the condo, half of everything else, and my freedom. He signed without contest. What choice did he have? We've all seen betrayals. We've all watched relationships implode, careers destroyed, lives upended. But watching calm destroy chaos? Watching silence speak louder than screaming? There's power in that, isn't there? The power of walking away with your head high. Of letting consequences unfold naturally. Of understanding that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to participate in your own destruction. I didn't need to shout about what Ethan did. His empty client roster did that for me. I didn't need to expose Riley's schemes. Her sudden disappearance told that story perfectly. All I needed to do was step back, stay silent, and let the truth do what truth does best.
Destroy those who try to bury it.
For months after the divorce was finalized, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text. An actual handwritten letter delivered to my office in a plain white envelope with no return address. The handwriting was feminine, careful, the kind of penmanship they don't teach anymore. I almost threw it away. Thought it was some kind of solicitation or sympathy card from a distant relative who'd heard about the divorce. But something made me open it. 5 words.
That's all it said.
He planned everything. I was just the bait. No signature. No explanation. Just those 5 words in Riley's handwriting. I recognized it from the birthday card she'd given Ethan that I'd found in Marcus's surveillance photos. My hands started shaking. I read it again. And again. Trying to make sense of what she was telling me. He planned everything. Not the affair. Not the dinner. Everything. I sat down hard in my office chair, that letter trembling in my hands, and suddenly every single piece started rearranging itself in my head. The accidental meeting in Seattle that was too convenient. Riley's desperate financial situation that made her the perfect accomplice. The public dinner, the baby offer, the theatrical betrayal, all of it staged exactly where it would cause maximum damage, maximum witnesses, maximum fallout. Ethan hadn't been seduced. He'd been the director of his own play. And I'd been the mark. I grabbed my phone, called Marcus. I need you to dig deeper into Ethan's finances. Not just the affair spending. Everything. His firm accounts, his clients, everything. Lana, the divorce is final. You don't need to. Marcus. Please. He heard something in my voice. I'll call you back in 2 hours. Those 2 hours felt like days. When Marcus finally called back, his voice was different. Careful. The way people sound when they're about to detonate your entire reality. You need to sit down. I'm sitting. Ethan's been embezzling from his clients for 18 months. Small amounts at first, then bigger. He's moved over $2 million through shell accounts in the Caymans. The room tilted. $2 million. It gets worse. The firm started an internal audit 3 weeks before your dinner with Riley. Someone tipped them off. They were closing in on him. Oh God. Oh God. The affair, I whispered. The public disaster, the divorce. Was cover, Marcus finished. A distraction. Make himself look like an idiot who ruined his marriage, not a criminal who was about to get caught. Throw everyone off the scent while he prepared to run. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. Riley wasn't his mistress. She was his prop. Paid or coerced or manipulated into playing the other woman at exactly the right moment to create maximum chaos. The baby offer. The public humiliation. My revenge that felt so perfect, so complete. All of it was theater. And I'd played my part exactly as he needed me to. While I was focused on destroying his reputation, exposing the affair, making him pay for his betrayal, he was moving money, covering tracks, building his exit strategy. And I'd given him the perfect smokescreen. Marcus, where is he now? Silence. Long enough to tell me everything. Marcus. The SEC raided his firm yesterday. Federal charges for wire fraud, embezzlement, securities violations. But Ethan, Lana, he's gone. Gone where? He never showed up for his arraignment. Missed his flight. His apartment is empty, his car's at the airport. They think he crossed into Mexico before the warrant was issued. My ex-husband, was a fugitive. The room was spinning. 7 years of marriage. 7 years with a man I thought I knew. And I'd never seen the real him at all. The news broke 48 hours later. Disgraced financial consultant flees country amid federal investigation. Portland man wanted for $2.3 million embezzlement scheme. And then 3 weeks after that, the headline that stopped my heart. Fugitive consultant presumed dead in Mexican boating accident. They found his rental boat capsized off the coast of Baja. No body. Just his wallet, his phone, and a jacket washed up on shore. Mexican authorities ruled it an accidental drowning. Case closed. But something in my gut twisted. Something that felt like intuition or paranoia, or maybe just the learned instinct of someone who'd been played before. Ethan was smart. Calculating. A man who'd orchestrated an elaborate con using his own marriage as cover. Would that man really die in a convenient boating accident right before he could be extradited? Or would he stage one more performance? I tried to let it go. Tried to move on. Sold the condo. It felt contaminated now. Every surface touched by a man I'd never really known. Bought a smaller place in the West Hills. Threw myself into work. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Unfinished. 2 months after the news of his death, I decided to go through the last of our shared belongings. Boxes I'd been avoiding. Wedding photos. Old letters. Things I couldn't quite throw away, but couldn't bear to look at. That's when I remembered the safe. We'd kept a small fireproof safe in our bedroom closet. Important documents, some cash, a few pieces of valuable jewelry. I'd transferred the documents to my lawyer months ago, but never bothered with the rest. I opened it now, punching in the code, our anniversary date, because Ethan was sentimental like that. or pretended to be. Inside, my passport, our marriage certificate, some cash, and a black velvet box. Empty. My grandmother's emerald necklace, an heirloom worth over $50,000. Art Deco. Irreplaceable.
Gone.
My blood turned to ice. I tore through the safe, through the boxes, through everything. It wasn't there. He'd taken it.
Before he left.
Before he died. That necklace was the only piece of my family history I had left. My grandmother had given it to me on her deathbed, made me promise to pass it to my daughter someday. The daughter I'd never have. And Ethan had stolen it. I stood in my empty apartment, surrounded by boxes of a life that had been a lie, holding an empty velvet case, and I understood. He wasn't dead. Dead men don't rob safes before they disappear. Dead men don't take specific, valuable, traceable items. He was alive. Somewhere. Living on stolen money and my grandmother's emerald necklace. And he thought he'd won. Thought he'd escaped. Thought I'd bought the story like everyone else. Thought I'd grieve, or move on or forget. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me before. Used me as cover, as a distraction, as the wronged wife who'd be too hurt to see the bigger picture. And it had worked. I'll give him that. But now I saw everything. Understood everything. And I had something he didn't know I had. Resources. Connections. A network of investigators and lawyers and information brokers I'd built through years of crisis management. And most importantly, nothing left to lose.
He's gone.
Presumed dead. Living his new life somewhere warm, probably laughing about how brilliantly he played everyone. But he still has something of mine. And I'm going to find him. Not for revenge. Not for justice. For my grandmother's necklace. For the one piece of my real family that bastard thought he could take from me. He thinks it's over. He thinks he won. He has no idea that the woman he betrayed, manipulated, and robbed is coming for him. And this time, I won't be distracted by staged affairs or fake betrayals. This time, I'll see him for exactly what he is. And I'll make sure the whole world does too. He wanted to disappear?
Perfect.
Let's see how well he hides when someone who knows all his secrets comes looking. I'm sitting by my window right now. 21st floor. Different building, different view, but the city looks the same. Portland spreads out beneath me like a constellation of amber lights, the Willamette River cutting through the darkness, like a scar that never quite heals. There's a glass of wine in my hand. Same Pinot Noir we drank that night at Castagna. I bought a case of it after the divorce finalized, not as punishment, but as reminder of who I was, who I became, and who I'll never let myself be again. It's been 8 months since that dinner. 6 months since Ethan disappeared. 4 months since they declared him dead. And every single night, I sit here and replay it all, looking for the moment I should have seen it coming. The crack in the facade I missed. The lie I believed when I should have known better. Because here's the truth nobody wants to hear. I loved him. God, I loved him so much it physically hurt. 7 years of my life. 7 years of building a future, making compromises, choosing us over everything else. And none of it was real. Or maybe it was real for me. And that's what makes it worse. That I gave my whole heart to someone who was always planning his exit. Always keeping secrets. Always 10 steps ahead in a game I didn't even know we were playing. People ask me how I'm doing. At work. At the gym. At the coffee shop where baristas recognize me from the news coverage. I'm fine, I tell them. And I am. Mostly. My career's never been better. That strategic silence everyone admired? It's become my signature. Companies pay premium rates for someone who knows how to manage crisis without creating more chaos. I bought this place outright. No mortgage. No ties to anyone. Just me and my view and my wine, and the knowledge that I survived something that should have destroyed me. But late at night, when the city quiets and I'm alone with my thoughts, I wonder about the version of me that died in that restaurant. The woman who still believed in vows. In promises. In the fundamental goodness of the person sleeping next to her.
She's gone. Completely.
And I don't know if I miss her or if I'm relieved she's dead. Because that woman was vulnerable.
Trusting.
The kind of person who could be used as cover for embezzlement and international flight. This version of me? She sees everything. Questions everything. Trusts no one completely. Is that survival or is that damage? I genuinely don't know anymore. Ethan followed greed. Made calculated choices. Hurt people deliberately. Used love as a weapon and loyalty as camouflage. I followed silence. Let the truth speak for itself. Stepped back and watched karma do its work. Only one of us survived it. He's either dead in the ocean or alive in some country without extradition, drinking cocktails with my grandmother's emerald necklace funding his new identity. Either way, he's gone. And I'm still here. Still breathing. Still working. Still rebuilding. But here's what I need you to understand. Betrayal doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send warning signs or red flags or obvious tells. It looks like love. Sounds like commitment. Feels like home. Right up until the moment it destroys you. I didn't see it coming. And I'm someone who reads people for a living. Someone trained to spot deception, manage narratives, anticipate moves. And I still missed it. So what chance do you have? Most people never see betrayal coming. They ignore the late texts, the new cologne, the distance that creeps in so slowly you don't notice until you're living with a stranger. They trust because trusting feels good, because suspicion feels ugly, because they don't want to be the paranoid spouse who questions everything. And then one day they're sitting across from their husband's ex-girlfriend being told she can provide what they can't. Or they're opening a safe and finding their most precious possession stolen. Or they're reading news articles about the person they built a life with, realizing they never knew them at all.
Don't be one of them.
Don't be the person who looks back and sees all the signs they ignored, the red flags they explained away, the truth they refused to see because seeing it would hurt. Subscribe to this channel. Follow this story. Because Ethan's not the end. There's more coming. Twists you won't expect. Revelations that'll make everything you just heard look simple. That letter from Riley? That was chapter 1 of a much longer story. The missing necklace? That's not just stolen jewelry. That's a breadcrumb. And I'm following it. So, if you want to know what happens when a woman with nothing left to lose goes hunting for the man who destroyed her life, you need to be here for it.
Subscribe.
Turn on notifications. Because the next part of the story, it's going to make this dinner look like foreplay. And for those of you still watching without subscribing, I see you. I know you're there, watching, waiting, consuming this story without committing. Tell me why in the comments.
Seriously.
I want to know, what's holding you back? What would make you hit that button? Is it skepticism? You think this is fake, made up, too dramatic to be real? Is it overwhelm? Too many channels already, too much content, too many notifications? Or is it fear? Fear that if you engage, if you commit, if you follow this story to its end, you'll see something in yourself you don't want to acknowledge? Because here's what I've learned. We all have a breaking point. We all have a moment where we choose who we're going to be. The victim or the survivor. The person who accepts their fate or the person who rewrites it. I chose survival. I chose silence as a weapon. I chose to let calm destroy chaos. And it worked. But the story's not over. Ethan's out there. Alive or dead, guilty or untouchable, free or fugitive. And I'm going to find out which. I'm going to get my grandmother's necklace back. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Ethan Mercer really was. Not the golden boy consultant. Not the devoted husband. Not the victim of his own bad choices. The calculating criminal who used his wife as a human shield while he robbed his clients blind. That's the story I'm going to tell. And you're going to want to be here when I do.
So subscribe.
Comment. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because betrayal happens in silence. But exposure? That happens in the light. And I'm about to shine a spotlight so bright, there'll be nowhere left for him to hide. See you in the next chapter. If you're brave enough to follow me there.